Shabbat Shalom. So while we talk about our ties to Eretz Israel, and those ties are real and those ties are strong, but if you look at the history of the Jewish people, it's really a story of migration, going back to the very beginning. Abraham is promised a land that he had never seen, right? Where was Abraham born? Ur, right? Ur Kasdim, Ur of the Chaldees, which is where?
Southern Mesopotamia.
Hmm?
Southern Mesopotamia.
Right, okay, what country?
Iraq,
right? Ur is near Nasiriyah in Iraq. Okay, and the two most prominent Jewish vernacular languages are Yiddish and Ladino, right? What is Yiddish? It's a German dialect, right? I mean, people who know Yiddish can understand German okay. Actually, Yiddish and Pennsylvania Dutch are fairly close. Yiddish is a German dialect with a lot of Hebrew and some Slavic loanwords, right? And what is Ladino? It's a Spanish dialect, right? It is Spanish as spoken in 1492, right, with some Turkish and Greek and Arabic loanwords in it, right? But Yiddish, which is a German dialect, was not spoken by German Jews, right? German Jews looked down on Yiddish, right? It was a jargon, right? It was spoken by Jews in Eastern Europe that the German Jews looked down on, right? And Ladino it originally comes from Spain, but to the extent that it was spoken in Turkey, Greece, and Bulgaria, right? So, history of migration. Now, in my case, right, because I love history, right? My grandparents were born in 4 different countries, right? My paternal grandfather was born in a town called Ilya. And by the way, Lisa Kudrow's family come from there as well. And a few years ago, there was an episode of the genealogy show, Who Do You Think You Are? Where she actually went back to Ilya, where her family was from. Now, where is Ilya? Again, right, if you ask the Jews, where is Ilya, we'll say Lithuania, right? If you look at a map, it's actually in Belarus. Okay, so, but my paternal grandfather was from Ilya. My paternal grandfather was born in Warsaw, okay, which as far as I know, everybody agrees is in Poland, right? My maternal grandfather was born in London, in the UK, and my maternal grandmother was born in the holy city of Brooklyn. Okay, so just out of curiosity, anybody else whose 4 grandparents were born in 4 different countries? Okay, how about 3? 3. 2? Okay, how about only 1 country? Right? That's surprising, okay? But anyway, so, right, if not for immigration, most of us would not exist, right? And now my paternal grandparents both died before I was born, but they did on both sides have siblings that I got to know. And so occasionally I was able to hear stories about what was like in Europe before they came here and how did they come here. And so my great aunt, so my grandfather's younger sister told me that when she was in her late teens, and they came one or two at a time, right? Because they would come, one would come and save up and send money back to buy a boat ticket for the next one, right? So they came one or two at a time, and she walked on foot from Ilya to Antwerp. Okay, so thank God for Google Maps, right? And here's what I discovered. If you go from Ilya to Antwerp by the best walking route, right? Because the ship came from Antwerp. Okay, it's 1,090 miles on foot, and you cross the following borders: Tsarist Russia into Poland, Poland into Germany, Germany into the Netherlands, and the Netherlands into Belgium, right? And guess what? They didn't have visas to do this, right? How do you get across each of those borders, right? There's two ways to do it, right? You either bribe the border guards or you sneak across, right? And so when we look at immigration, it's our story, right? It's our story. It's just, a generation or two after us, right? And, 6 years ago, I was in Nogales, and the things that I mentioned, things that I saw there rather, they're gonna repeat themselves, right? We know that, and it's only gonna get worse, right? And, one morning when I was in Nogales in the Comodore, I sat with a family of 5, including 2 teenage girls, and asked them where they came from, and then I figured out that they walked half again as far as my grandparents did, right? And on foot. And these people, right, they had never met Jews before, and they asked, who are we and why are we there? Somos grupo de rabinos. What are rabinos, right? So we are a group of rabbis, right? What are rabinos? I explained, es como sacerdote, como un ministro, right? It's like a priest or a minister, pero somos judíos, but we're Jewish. Okay. So one of them said, but why is the name for your profession Rabino, right? And, it showed me that these are like, she was an inquisitive girl. I mean, right, it's a good, right? If somebody asks a good question, right, they're a smart person and a thinker, right? And, why is what you do, why is it called a rabbi? It's a good question, right? And so we sat and we spoke to them and we understood their fears and we understood why they were fleeing their homeland and why they were trying to come to the United States. And we saw them the next day, and then we never saw them again, right? And the agency where we volunteer, they don't have the ability to track their clients once they leave the Comodore. So did they make it across? Who knows? Were they arrested and jailed? Were they sent back to where they came from? Nobody knows, right? But why did Jacob and his family leave Israel to go to Egypt? Because it's nicer there, right? No, they left because there was a famine, right? Stay at home and die, or take a risk and immigrate, right? And why did our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents come here, right? Because stay where you are and risk being killed, right? So you walk 1,000 miles and you sneak across borders and you bribe border guards and you come here, right? And that's what they did, and that's what the ones, right? I mean, let me ask a question. Anybody here not descended from immigrants? Huh? If you go back far enough, you're not descended from immigrants? Are you?
Half my grandparents and some people who were born in the US.
Right, of course, right? We're all descended from immigrants, right? The only thing, and actually, even if you're Native American, right? They don't originate in America. They originated in Asia, and they also migrated just, long time before, right? And so 2 weeks from now, we're gonna start reading the book of Exodus. And, you hear people say, like, when they see the scenes at the southern border, right, and they saw the scenes of family separation, right, which is what motivated me to organize that group that went down. And will that happen again? I don't know. If it does, will I go down again? If my wife will let me, yes. And then people say, well, what kind of parent puts their children through that? Right? And one of our people in the group said, what kind of parent puts their kid in a basket and floats him on the Nile? Right? And, right, why did Amram and Yocheved do that? Right? Because if they didn't do that, he would have died. Right? So you take a risk, and the risk is actually better than the alternative, right? And look, the one thing that I learned in Nogales, right? And I say Nogales, it's actually Los Ambos Nogales, right? Both Nogaleses, right? Because there's Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora, right? There is no easy answer, right? There is no easy answer. I think it was H.L. Mencken who said, every problem has a solution which is simple, elegant, and wrong, right? I mean, I understand that we cannot take every person in the world who's at risk into our country. I understand that, right? But we also need immigration, right? I mean, if you look at, right, I'll be polite, say the debate that's going on within elements of the Republican Party right now, right? Because look, it's one thing to say immigration, but only for people who follow the laws and have the right forms and so on and so forth. But there are clearly people who want no immigration whatsoever. Right? And look, I mean, I'm not an economist, right? I did take some courses in economics in college. If we have no immigration whatsoever, bad things are gonna happen. I mean, if I look, right, I mean, I had a lot of health issues this past year, and I have a lot of doctors, right? Every single doctor that I have had this year is either an immigrant or a child of immigrants, right? If we have no immigration, pretty soon, we have no doctors, right? Pretty soon, we have no engineers, no programmers, no nothing, right? So we need immigration. We can argue about the numbers, and we can argue about the qualifications, and we can argue about the processes, right? But with no immigration whatsoever, we are off service, right? I mean, there's no question about it, right? So, interestingly, I spoke a little bit about this last night too, but Joseph tells his brothers, right, when you meet Pharaoh, he's gonna ask you what your profession, right? How do you make a living? Tell him that you raise cattle. Don't tell him that you're shepherds, because the Egyptians abhor shepherds, right? And if you look at the commentary on this verse in Eitz Chaim, was written by Rabbi Chaim Potok, right, who's famous for other things rather than the Eitz Chaim commentary, but he also wrote the Eitz Chaim commentary. And Rabbi Potok says the following about this verse, that the Egyptians find shepherds to be an abomination. What he says, this remark was occasioned by the fact that the townsfolk held the shepherd in low social esteem, right? Nevertheless, they were valued because they did the necessary work ordinary Egyptians did not want to do, right? The Egyptians hated shepherds, they abhorred them, and they valued them because they needed them, because we need shepherds. No native-born Egyptian wants to be a shepherd, right? I mean, I know we have that thing, right? They wear sandals and play flutes, right? But being a shepherd is hard, nasty, dangerous work. I mean, look how Jacob describes to Laban what he went through, right? Nobody wants to be a shepherd. Nobody wants to be a busboy. Nobody wants to be a chambermaid in a hotel, right? Low social esteem. Yeah, those people. But we need those people, right? We need those people. And I don't know the answer, right? I don't know the answer. I do know the question, okay? And we need immigration, and we need security, and we need control, and it's all very, very complicated. Here's what I do know, okay? When you talk about people coming in and poisoning our bloodstream, what they said about our grandparents, right? And when you take a terrorist attack that was committed by an Army veteran born in Texas and say immigration is the problem? All right, I mean, let's try and look at the situation with a little bit of compassion and a little bit of reasoning and a whole lot of truth and accuracy. Shabbat shalom. And continue with the Kaddish before Musaf, Musaf Amidah, page 155 or 428, and then we'll say the first two pages